Okay, this is part 3 of a trilogy, okay? It started with my 2 cents. Last week was egg on my neck. And this is my actual review of the science of yoga. I have read the whole book. So, first of all, let me say I am going to recommend that everybody buy this book and read it, okay? So I'm contributing to the book sales here because I think it's an important book, you know, because there's a lot of important things in it. So first of all, let me say what I think he gets really, really right, okay? That's really good about the book. What's really good about the book is the survey of the history of scientific investigation into yoga and some of the claims and effects of yoga. Okay, he does a very good job on the research and on laying out some of the history of the different people who were involved in the research over the years. And he tells the story very well. It's a very compelling story. And in the process of telling the story, he does manage to debunk some of the pet peeves that I've had over the years as well. This thing about oxygenation being the holy grail of breathing, and you're bringing more oxygen in and getting rid of carbon dioxide and all of that. You know, and I've been saying for years that that's bullshit. And he lays out the science behind that. Also, he talks about how this idea that yoga is going to rev up your metabolism so you can lose weight. Actually, when you're doing yoga, for the most part, in most practices, you're lowering your metabolism. You're slowing your system down. Okay, and I think that that is very important to remember. Now, the fact that a lot of people do yoga and manage to lose weight is due to other factors. It's due to being more conscious about what you're doing and maybe what you're putting in your mouth and what your emotional states are, and not necessarily overriding them with food or anything else that you're doing. Okay, so it can be presented as part of, you know, this overall package that helps you, but the actual slowing down of your metabolism, if you think about it, is going to make you put on weight if you keep putting the same amount of food in your mouth. So that gets debunked. And I'm talking about that for years too. And the other thing that I have been trying to tell people, which he does a very good job of presenting in terms of the research that's out there, is this idea that you can get an effective aerobic workout from just yoga. That yoga is a complete thing, that you don't need anything else. You don't need to go to the gym. You don't need to run. You don't need to do any kind of aerobic activity. And that is absolute nonsense. Okay? And I've been interviewed in Yoga Journal about this, and I said it years ago, and I'll say it again. You know, you can do a vigorous form of yoga that makes you sweat and raises your heartbeat. Yes, that is true. But what has been laid out by the research in terms of the level of heart rate that you need to raise your body up to get all of the documented benefits of aerobic fitness, that does not happen in yoga, no matter how vigorously you do it. And if you try to make it happen, you are gonna hurt yourself. It is not well suited to it. You will trash your joints, putting yourself through some kind of crazy, fast, you know, Ashtanga-based vinyasa, whatever workout, trying to get your heart rate up there, and it ain't gonna work, and all you end up doing is hurting yourself. So he does a very good job of that. So for the first part of the book, I'm reading all this, and I'm going, yes, 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 this is great. And then I get to the part of the book where he talks about injuries, and I'm going, oh, no, no, no! This is terrible, because, you know, as brilliant as they were in putting the injury conversation forward to get us talking and get the book selling, okay, that's great marketing. But, you know, he's going into greater detail, this whole thing about the stroke and the tearing of the, you know, cervical arteries and all of that. And he lays out some pretty scary numbers based on the evidence that we have, multiplying by the number of people practicing yoga, and he's estimating that conservatively 300 people a year are giving themselves stroke by practicing yoga. Now, basic logic and science requires anyone who calls themselves a science writer to state right up front that correlation is not causation. This is a rule of logic. It is a logical fallacy to conflate correlation with causation, okay? And he does not do that because he does not state how many people get these kinds of injuries who don't do yoga. How many people a year are having these sorts of incidents when they're just living their lives and, you know, sitting and eating breakfast and having a stroke? Does that mean you can correlate eating breakfast with having a stroke as a causative factor? You know, he doesn't compare these scary numbers with how many people are getting the same kinds of things going on in their body who are not doing yoga. And that's to me bad science, and it's bad reporting. And there's a reason he does it, because as it turns out, he has an agenda. Okay, so the agenda becomes very clear towards the end of the book, because he builds his case with these reports of injuries as yoga in the wrong hands is potentially dangerous, or even in the right hands, certain poses, certain practices on their own, and I talked about this in the first video, have an intrinsic risk, okay? And I've already talked about that. But what he does in the next chapter, after the one about injury, okay, this is the chapter about healing. And now this is where he falls down, I think, in the writing, because when he's sticking to the science and the research and the history of the science, he's great. It's wonderful, okay? Here in the healing chapter, he basically, he makes up a narrative, okay, that supports his case. And his case ultimately is going to be that yoga, if it wants to be credible and part of healthcare delivery, should start behaving more like a medical therapeutic field, okay, with accreditation and licensing and all of that stuff, which I think anyone who knows me knows I'm dead set against that, okay? Now, he makes up this narrative in this healing chapter where he pits two people who I know, by the way, Lauren Fishman, who I know a little bit, who's here in New York, who's an MD who does great work. He's done a lot of research. He's an Iyengar-based yoga practitioner, and he does really remarkable work. He's written books and studies, and he has some very qualified yoga teachers working with him, and Lauren does great stuff, you know? And so Lauren here, in this story he tells, is the good guy. Okay, because he's gone to all the trouble of becoming an MD and you know, having all of these accreditations and so on, and he knows what he's doing. So that's Lauren, right? And unfortunately, the person who he turns into the bad guy, he introduces with this sentence: if the origins of the modern field, meaning yoga therapy, can be traced to a single person, it would be Larry Payne, the founding president of the International Association of Yoga Therapists. Larry is a good friend of mine. Larry is the first person who ever told me about Desikachar. Larry is the person who came in and worked with us at the International Sports Medicine Institute to run the first ever yoga therapy department in a facility like that. Larry is the founder of IAYT. He's also the person I've been going to Los Angeles to teach for the last 7 years for his yoga therapy training program at Loyola Marymount University. So I am not an unbiased reporter at this point in terms of how he absolutely launches what I consider to be an ad hominem attack against Larry, okay, by questioning his credentials, by questioning the PhD that he got from a school that may or may not have been a diploma mill, okay, and by questioning some of the science that he reports in Yoga for Dummies. Now, Larry made the same mistakes about breathing and stuff in Yoga for Dummies that a lot of people made, you know, and maybe it's not fair to single him out for that. But the point is that what he says, what Broad says, is that yoga therapy is the Wild West now. It's the Wild West. It's lawless, meaning that anyone can hang out a shingle, anyone can say anything about what they do, okay? And, well, that's true, okay? But what he calls lawlessness, I call the free market, okay? And we have laws against fraud. We do. It's not the Wild West. It's the free market, because there are laws against lying about your credentials, okay? And if somebody who's being honest about their credentials, meaning that they have very little training but decide to call themselves a yoga therapist, if they impart that information honestly to a potential student or client, and the client still decides to work with them, whose rights have been violated, and who has the right to say that they can't enter into that relationship? That's my point, you know. And he goes on to kind of trash IAYT, the International Association of Yoga Therapists, as a way of people getting false credentials. Because he looks at the certificate you get when you join IOIT, and it looks like a credential. You know, it's got signatures on it and this and that. But he says himself, but a quick read shows that the document is in fact quite meaningless. It's meaningless as a credential. It says that you received the certificate in recognition of supporting yoga as an established and respected therapy in the West. It says right on the certificate what it is and what it isn't. And I'm saying, yeah, anybody can do a quick read of the credential, not the credential, the certificate, and see what it is. Absolutely. Why wouldn't you read the pieces of paper hanging on someone's wall? Absolutely. The student has to take that responsibility for seeing, you know, what is written on the piece of paper hanging on. I don't care what it looks like, if it has a seal on it, an embossed seal, and signatures, and you know, angels with farts coming out of their ass on the certificate. It doesn't matter. You have to read it. And he did read it, and he realized what it was. But he says, oh, that's misleading. And IOIT is issuing the certificates as a way of helping people to mislead potential students and clients, which I think is very unfair. IOIT does a great job. They can do a much better job, and I've been, you know, not shy about criticizing them when I think they haven't been doing a great job. But they do a great job of educating as much as they can the public and the professionals in the field about raising standards. And that's what they've been trying to do. And I think it's right, they've been very circumspect in becoming some kind of accrediting agency, okay? IOIT is not perfect. The Yoga Alliance is not perfect, okay? I'm fully on board with that idea. But you know, what he really does in the epilogue, it says, if I could snap my fingers and make it happen, I would establish a yoga education society that took up the job of pulling all the information together and making it publicly available. He seems to forget that IOIT is that organization. They have a database of information where they pull together all of the research that's been done. They have an incredible database of information that any member can look up and see what research has been done, what research is being done. They have a peer-reviewed journal. Okay, I have done peer review for the journal and caught mistakes that were going into articles, okay? He doesn't mention this because he has an agenda. He builds his case that yoga is dangerous, that it's the Wild West and anyone can do anything they want, and that it should come under medical, governmental supervision in order for it to be safe and credible. What he doesn't mention is that there's a lot of MDs out there that are fully credentialed that are making mistakes and doing crazy, damaging shit already. And people don't come to us because they want us to be like that. They come to us because we're an alternative. And it would be a betrayal of these people to turn ourselves into that. You know, I'm a strong advocate of raising our credibility through introducing training programs that are degree programs in universities. That is why I do not call myself a therapist. I think it's wrong to call ourselves therapists. It creates the wrong conversation, and it puts us into this sort of situation that he's talking about, okay? I'm against medicalizing yoga therapy. I'm against even calling it yoga therapy. I call myself a yoga educator. The people who graduate from our advanced training programs here are called yoga educators. And I think we should be integrating these sorts of trainings into educational institutions like universities where you can get a degree, whether at the bachelor's, master's, or doctorate level in any field or emphasis of yoga that you want. Okay, and I think that's the conversation that's worth having. I think he has an agenda. He puts a lot of faith in the government to protect the public, when in fact it has exactly the opposite effect. I've written extensively about that and been talking about it for years. That's a little bit beyond the scope of this book review, but to sum up, when he gets it right, he gets it really, really right, and it's good and it's valuable. And when he gets it wrong, it's when he's working off of this agenda and just really pushing it in a way that I think stretches credibility. And it should be questioned, his agenda. So thank you very much. That's part 3. And I hope you enjoyed the trilogy. So see you around. Okay. Buy the book and see what you think. Don't take my word for it. See what you think and let me know. Okay.